Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I'm going to do a little bit more with the same worksheet that we've been working in. So I just kind of want to start with how to do things like copy cells, insert cells, delete rows, delete columns, things like that. So let's say you're working through and you're trying to clean up your worksheet. So sometimes like I'll be working through and it's like, oh, I don't need these extra columns. I want to delete those. Or, hey, I need to add in some extra rows, for instance. So how do I make those modified changes in my worksheet? Okay. So one thing you can do is you can copy cells. So for instance, let's say these descriptions right here, I don't know, I want to move them somewhere else in my workbook. So there's different ways that you can copy, and I encourage you to read through your text to see some other ways. My favorite way is just to select the cells that I want to copy, and then either you can right click and select either cut or copy depending on what you want to do, or you can use a shortcut like Control-C for copy. I'm going to copy those cells, and then I'm going to select where I would like them to go instead. So I would like them to go here, and then what I could do is right click and just go ahead and paste those cells. You could also use a shortcut. So for instance, oops, let's clear these out for a second. I'm going to clear my contents. So let's say I want to use shortcuts. I could highlight what I want, do Control-C, and then I can select where I would like those to go, and Control-V will paste them for me. So that's one way that you can, copy. If you want to cut something, you can do similar. So let's say I don't want to just copy it. Again, you can right click and click the cut option, or you can go ahead and use a shortcut for that, and then I can paste them here, we'll say, and it will cut the actual original data as well. For me, I usually like to copy first and make sure that I really like what I just did. If you don't like something, you can always use this back key up here. So let's say I'm like, oh no, what did I just do? I hit the back button and it will fix it for me. Notice how the border here is selected. If you decide that you don't really want to copy or cut something, just double click in any other cell and it will go away. So let's say I copied here and now I say to myself, okay, I really do like that. I would like to get rid of this. So you could cut this data, but you could also just right click and again, hit clear contents. Clear contents does not change the formatting of your screen. It just empties those cells. So that's another way that you could do it too, in order to move data around. So just a couple things that you could do for copy, paste, or cut and paste in clearing cells. Let's say you want to do some rearranging. Now, you may also want to insert or delete a column. So let's say, for instance, I don't really need this description column anymore. I just want to get rid of it. So I can select that column. And again, there's different ways to do this. So you can see the word delete right here. You could do that. I tend to love right-clicking everything. So I can click right-click and then hit delete. And it will delete the entire column. So just be careful. You're not clearing cells. You're actually deleting that column. You can see how everything shifted over, right? Like if I undo that, my D column disappeared and my units now became my D column. So I cut that entire column. Let's say you change your mind. You can select the column again, and again, right click, and you could use the insert key, and you can insert a column back in. Again, you also have insert over here in delete as well. And you can insert cells, you can insert a sheet this way, or insert columns or rows. So this one has a little bit more features there on what you would like to do. You can also change your rows. So let's say I would like to delete this row. Again, I can select it. I like to right click and I'll hit delete, and it will delete that entire row. You can see everything shifted up. Or if I don't like that, I can again right click, I can hit insert, and it will insert a row there for me as well. So I can modify, and usually I do a lot of inserting because I think I have all my expenses and then I realize I don't. You can also highlight more than one row, and if you click delete, it would delete all of them. Or if you click insert, see how I had 4 rows highlighted, it will insert 4 rows as well. So that's a nice little time saver if you need to insert more than one thing. You can select a couple at a time. And then I can also change this too. Let's say I want to move this back up. I could copy these cells and move them back to where I have them. And then again, if I like that change, I could have used the cut feature. I tend to not like cut personally, just because I feel like I always make mistakes. And then I can just clear those quickly afterwards if I realize I like what I did. So I can do some changes like that as well. You can delete cells. It looks a little bit weird. Sometimes they don't shift as nicely. So for instance, like if I want to delete, let me delete this column again. So let's say I just want to delete these cells right here. So you could do that. Just select the cells that I want to delete. And it's going to ask me, what do I want to do? Do I want to shift everything to the left, or do I want to shift cells up? How do I want to handle this deletion? I'm going to select shift left. And you'll notice what happens is my units bumped over to subcategories, right? Because I didn't delete the whole column. I just deleted those few cells. So it had to fill in somewhere. So you can make those changes. You can also select and again, click insert and choose to insert cells. So shift those cells back to the right, shift them down, however you want to insert those cells. So for me, I tend to do mostly inserting or deleting whole columns and rows so that everything sort of stays organized. But you can insert cells as well and delete them if you find that necessary. Just remember that deleting is different than clearing, right? Clearing the contents just clears what's written in the cells. Deleting actually shifts things around. It will delete the cells, it will delete the column, the row. So it's a little bit different. And as you're changing things, you do just want to be careful that you don't mess up your formulas. So it is always good to double check afterwards and make sure that, okay, by deleting that stuff or by inserting that stuff, I didn't mess anything up, did I? It should typically shift appropriately, but it's good to check, particularly if you're doing a lot of editing. So that's something to just kind of watch out for there. So let me do an example here. And this I already have inserted here, but you may not have these. So yours may look like this. And you may say, oh, I would really love to have a little summary data up top so that when I open it, I can see that summary data right there. I'm not searching through that workbook. And again, you can go ahead and start by just inserting some rows here. And I can insert them one at a time, or I can insert them as a group by selecting, more than one. I can also change my rows. So if I don't want to change just one row at a time, I can select a whole group. And then when I change one, they'll all change appropriately. It's a nice little trick there as well that I didn't mention yet in the other videos. And then what I can do is maybe I want to add a piece of information here that says summary. Oop, that is way too big. We'll fix that in a second. We're doing expense categories. And then we can also do total expenses. All right, so if I look here, you can see up top that my formatting here must have been pre-changed. So I'm going to select those cells. I'm going to fix this and make that formatting 11. And that looks a little bit better. Maybe fix my height a little bit there. But that looks a little bit better. So just fixing that. So for my expense categories, if you look down here, you can see, or I guess you could say type of expenses, maybe that's a better title. Right, and I can add and change just by selecting the cell and deleting like I would writing a document. We can use what's called the count function. And so count just counts the number of cells that contain numbers. Count A will actually count the number of cells in a range, again, that contain a number. You can kind of go through, this one will count empty cells, etc. So they kind of all have different features here. But typically here, we're counting the number of cells that have a number. So I'm going to use this function. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select, I guess I'll select right here. It doesn't really matter which one I select, but I'm going to select my units. These have numbers in them. And I'm going to select these rows. So I'm sort of counting the number of different rows I have, the number of different kinds of costs. And when I do that, it will return the value 4 because I have 4 different types of costs here. So that count function is nice to count up how many numbers that you're using. So I have 4 different numbers here that I'm using, and we can use that for different things. Like here, we're counting up the number of different types of expenses as we go through. So just another type of function that you can use. And the count A function, like I was saying here, should also count text. Let's see if it works. Let's say I do these right here. And you get 4. So they both do same things, but the count function is specifically for number cells that have numbers in them, whereas count A will count text cells as well. So that's a nice feature if you need to just quickly count up how many items you have of something. And then for your total expenses here, maybe you just want to copy the cell at the bottom. So you could hit equals, and then you could just select that single cell that's right here. And I hit enter, and that's it. So it just brings that cell data right up top. So as that one changes, this one will also change. So it's the same data, it's just kind of written in 2 different spots. So that's another way that you can use functions as well here, or formulas, is to just kind of copy cells if you want them more easily accessible or more visual in a particular area. And that's really helpful too if you're giving, some sort of presentation, for instance. All right, I think the last thing I want to talk about here is just a little bit of formatting in this video. So here, we do have our expenses here. You can go ahead and format your cells. We've talked about this already, but if you hit format cells, you can designate them. This one's designated as currency already, but you could change it to a number or to general. I'm going to leave it as currency because that works for this problem. So again, don't forget you can format your cells as needed, but you can also do things like change the alignment of them. So let's say I don't want the text in a certain alignment, I can change that. Or if I want to wrap my text or shrink my text to fit the cell, I can do that too. Merging cells is really nice. It'll merge 2 cells together. So that can be helpful in certain cases. We haven't seen that really yet, but that's a nice feature. You can change the font of your cells. And the big thing here that I really like are borders. Borders just help to obviously show different areas, right? So you can outline that cell. You can change how dark that border is as well. If you don't want to outline the whole thing, you can just select which parts you want. Maybe you just want the top and the bottom selected here as well. So it's just really nice to help clarify different parts of the data. You can also fill that cell. So maybe I would really love to highlight this and I want to make that cell yellow. So I can go ahead and format that. And now I see that I have a nice border around there and that cell is yellow. Again, it just helps to draw the eye. It allows me to put in maybe headings and titles a little bit easier. Right, so maybe I would like to, bold this or change the font, change the color. I can select multiple cells. I can also use my features here. So I can change those colors to be blue. And I can also even merge them. So I can, take 2 cells together. I can right click on those. And then when I go to format, I can even do things like merge those cells together so that they kind of become just one group. You can see how it's now one cell. So there's a lot that we can do with formatting as well. And I encourage you to play around with that formatting and find out what works for you and what you like to just make your workbook look nice, right? So the whole point is that, one, we are using these workbooks for information and to hold data and to use formulas and things like that and to help make all that easier for us. But they should also look nice. You should be able to send them to somebody else and have them understand them and find the title and find the key information and know how to read it as well. And that may even mean that you have to add in a Word document or something that explains some of your processes or an extra sheet, and that's fine too. But when we're presenting data and we're maybe taking some of this data and exporting it to a presentation, we do love to have cells highlighted and borders and all of that good stuff and font that works. Another thing that we can do is to change our viewing. So if you go to that file button and you go to print, you can change the orientation. So right now I'm in landscape orientation. So my document is longer or wider, I guess, rather than taller. But you could also change it to portrait orientation, and you can see how that changes what a printout would look like for that particular document. Ideally, we like to have it printed if you're going to print in a way that makes sense for the reader to view it. So if possible, having everything on one page is wonderful. That's not always possible if our documents are really large, but you may want to toggle between landscape and portrait orientation to see what would be a good print feature or viewing feature for you in Excel. You can also figure out the zoom feature. So you can see that I have it selected as fit sheets on one page, so that everything is on one page. And this works well if there's not too much data. If you have a lot of columns and rows, it will make your data extremely small and not able to be read on a printout. So that's not always the best option. You could do things like fit the columns on one page, or maybe fit rows on one page. Here, mine isn't changing too much because it's kind of all the same format. There's not that much data. Or you could even do no scaling. So if there's no scaling, then it's not going to change that. You'd have these kind of natural breaks in your Excel document there. And when you're done with that, you can go back to your regular screen. So like, let's say I just want to type in some random data. I'm just going to type in A, B, C, D, E. Oh, I missed E. That's all right. F, G is fine. So see this double line right here, or this dotted line? That's where your pages are. So it's actually showing you how it would print. And again, if you don't like that, you can go to File and Print and look at that kind of those preview sections here. So here I have no scaling, and you can see that now I'm on 2 pages. So my document would print like this. Or maybe I would like to have all columns on one page, and you can see how that it shrunk it so that we can fit everything on one page. And that's something that you just have to kind of play around with and see what the best options may be there. You can change your headings. Obviously, again, like we said, you can change different to portrait. So going to portrait does not work very well here. Landscape seems to fit the data better. It's a little bit larger. You can go into page setup and go into more detail as well. So you can manually fit to 1 page by 2 pages tall or something like that. You can change by the percentage. So you can zoom by percentage there, right? Reduce the size. Think about your margins or your headers or footers, the sheets, etc. So there's a lot that you can do here to edit how that Excel sheet and workbook is viewed as well. So I encourage you, again, to really just kind of play around with the formatting as well here. And this kind of what this video was about, like inserting rows, deleting things, kind of cleaning up how it looks, making the formatting nice, using the font you want, the size you want, borders, colors, rearranging things so that it fits well. How are you going to print it so that it presents well to your clients, etc. And the last thing that's interesting that I'll show you is that if you go back to formulas here, you actually have a button that says show formulas. And if you do that, it will show you the formulas that you've used in all of your cells. So this is a nice little check. So typically you probably are going to use that feature more internally to make sure your formulas are working okay. But as a math person, I love this feature. When I look at your homeworks, I'm going to be using this feature so I can see your formulas too. And that's a really nice tool, and you can turn that off as well. So you're not going to give a presentation with the formulas. You would shut that back off. But for you to check things and make sure those formulas are correct before you're ready to publish or format and things like that, that show formulas button is going to be really helpful for you. All right, so as usual, get in there, give it a try, play around with Excel. That's the best way to learn, is to just try stuff. And if you have questions, make sure you reach out.